Welcome to the recorded training for the release point section of the facility inventory in SLEIS. In order to navigate to the release points information for your facility, click the Login link at the welcome screen and type in your SLEIS user account credentials. You will be taken to the My Facility screen, where you can see a list of all the facilities your account has been linked to. Some SLEIS users may only have one facility linked to their account, while other users may have multiple facilities linked to their account. Click the Open button under the Actions heading on the right side of the screen for the facility you would like to view information for. Once you click the Open button, you will be brought to the My Reports screen. This report screen will list all the emissions reports that are available for you to view or submit for once the DNR has created the report. In this case, we are looking at the 2016 emissions report. You will notice the status is in process. Upon first logging in and viewing your 2016 emissions report, a button with a play icon will be listed. This indicates the report has not yet been started. Click this button to begin working on your emissions report. In this case, the emissions report has already been started, so the status is in process. Once you click the Open button on the My Report screen, you will be taken to the 2016 emissions report screen for the facility. At this screen, you will be able to view the facility inventory and the emissions report. This screen allows the user to view or edit information related to the facility, release points, control devices, emission units, unit processes, and process emissions. Click the Release Points button to update information related to release points at your facility. After clicking the Release Points button, a listing of release points at your facility will appear on the screen. This screen allows you to sort by identifier, release point type, and release point status. The default setting for the display of release points is in ascending order. Click the identifier header and the release points will be listed in descending order. In the upper right corner of the screen, there is a filter box. If your facility has a large number of release points, you can use the filter box to save time when navigating directly to a release point you would like to update. Simply type in the release point identifier or release point description, and SLEIS will shorten the list of release points to those that have matching results to the criteria you enter in the filter box. SLEIS also allows you to export data related to all of the release points that are listed for your facility. Click the Export button in the lower left corner to download a CSV file, which contains information related to your release points. A folder will open with two files. Click the Release Points CSV file to view the information related to the release points at your facility. You also have the ability to add a release point at your facility if you have the editor role. Having the editor role also allows you to edit information related to release points. To add a release point, click the Add button in the lower right corner of the screen. You must provide the release point identifier for the release point that you are adding. Throughout the SLEIS database, required data is indicated by a red bar on the left side of the data field. The database will not let you save the record you are on until all required fields have been data entered. When naming the identifier for your release point, please be consistent with the way the construction permit was issued for the release point. In other words, please reference the cover letter of your construction permit for the release point to obtain the correct identifier. Once you make a successful save for the release point, the identifier will not be able to be edited in the future. So make sure the identifier that you use is one that the facility would like to permanently have. Next, you need to select a release point type for the identifier. You'll notice that all release point types require stack height stack shape, stack diameter, exit gas temperature, and exit gas flow rate, along with the units of measure for that flow rate. This holds true for all release point types, with the exception being a fugitive release point type. If you change the release point type to fugitive, you'll notice that stack height, stack shape, stack diameter, exit gas temperature, and exit gas flow rate are no longer listed. So, the information that is required is dependent upon the release point type that is selected for this release point identifier. In this example, the release point type is being selected as vertical. The user is then also required to provide a description for the release point. The status is automatically defaulted to operating because it is a new release point that was just added. If you are trying to change a status for a release point from operating to either permanently or temporarily shut down, the status date becomes a required field. A red bar will not show, but a validation error message will occur if you do not enter a status date for release points that are permanently or temporarily shut down. For demonstration purposes, I will change the release point status back to operating. Next, the user is required to enter a stack height. Stack height needs to be entered in units of measure of feet. This information can be obtained from the construction permit. The shape of the stack opening should be indicated by clicking the circular or rectangular radio button. You'll notice when the rectangular button is selected, new fields open up that require the user to enter the length and width of the opening in feet. Once the user enters the length and width of the rectangular opening and navigates to a different field, a value is populated for the equivalent diameter. Additionally, the exit gas temperature and exit gas flow rate are required fields that can typically be found in a construction permit. While the exit gas velocity field is marked as required, it does not need to be completed if the exit gas flow rate is provided. At this point, the user may click the Save button in the lower right corner of the screen. SLEIS will notify the user if the changes were successfully saved or if there are any validation errors associated with the Release Point tab. Moving on to the Location tab, none of the data elements that are listed are required. If you do know the release point latitude, you would also need to report the release point longitude. If you tried entering one, but not both data points and click Save, a validation error would occur and a corrective action would be displayed below the data element for which information is being required. On the Additional Information tab, the information displayed is the data related to release points that was migrated from SPARS to SLEIS that was considered to have value-added information to stakeholders or DNR air quality staff. However, none of these data fields are required to be reported. Once the user is done updating the information for the release point identifier, you can click the Back button to navigate back to the list of release points at the facility. You'll notice under the Actions heading, there are two buttons for each release point. I am logged in as an editor for this facility. Therefore, I have the right to edit any of the release point information that I choose. If I only have a viewer role for the facility, I would only see the View button and the Edit button would not be displayed. The rights each user has in SLEIS are completely dependent upon the role that is indicated on the SLEIS electronic reporting registration form. In order to edit a release point, the user would click the Edit button under the Actions heading for the release point they are interested in maintaining. The business rules of SLEIS that apply while a user is in edit mode are the same as when a user is creating a new identifier. This concludes the recorded training for the release point section of the facility inventory of SLEIS.